Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm Dirk Geary and I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease 4 years ago at the age of 59. I'd just like to share this video I made with the Norfolk Norwich University Hospital. They use clips from this in their in-house training for their nurses, medical staff and doctors. This is part 1 and I will upload part 2 in the near future. I hope this will go some way to help people understand early onset dementia, whether they are living with it or not. Anyway, please keep watching to see the video. Thank you.
Yeah, I had about 5 or 6 concussions, and then later on, when I took the post office over, I have also got knocked out once when I was at work, which was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I never really, having had concussions before, never really thought about it much. But then it must be, it's probably 5 years ago, you just start to notice people say things to you and you say, no, I never said that. At the time I was a director at North Walsham Rugby Club, so I was having meetings with people and people were then saying, well, you said you were going to do this. No, I never. So there was just little gaps here and there, and you get quite paranoid because, especially if people are saying you said you were going to do something, you're thinking to yourself, well, no, I didn't. So why are they saying that? They're just blaming me for something that's not been done. So it started to get more of a headache than I normally had. So I ended up going to the doctor to see what was wrong. Not the best of experiences. It is a lucky dip of what doctor you get. My first doctor I saw had no experience of dementia or anything like that. As far as he was concerned, he several times told me that he would walk from the kitchen into the living room and his children would tell him, Dad, you forgot to bring your coffee with you. And trying to explain to him that if you walk from one room to another and you suddenly think, what am I doing in this room? You've not got a clue that you've got a cup of coffee or anything like that because you can't remember that you were in the previous room. So, but he wasn't very good. So he did the short dementia test that they do. So he prints it out and quite loudly says in front of me, oh, what's today's date? Oh, I can't remember what it was, like 25th of November. His first question on the list is, what's today's date? So you get the first question right. And just, simple things like that. He went through it. He says, well, as far as I can see, he says, there's nothing wrong. So I said, well, what about the headaches I'm getting? He says, well, we'll send you for an MRI. So I went for an MRI. A few weeks later, had my MRI. Then a few weeks after that, went back to the doctor. He said, well, again, I forget my cup of coffee. And at this point, I'm about ready to throttle him because I know there's something wrong. And by this time, the second time I went, I actually took my wife because she realised there was something not quite right. He went through the MRI and said, no, there's nothing wrong with it. There's no tumour or anything like that, which, to be perfectly honest, was my main concern. You've got a headache, you're thinking, tumour, something's wrong. So I was happy about that. Then we actually moved house. So we moved into a different area. COVID raised its ugly head. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but something happened and my wife turned around to me and said, you need to go and see the doctor again. So it was in the first lockdown. So I had to do it online. Then they said, would a telephone call be all right? he rang me back and he said, look, he said, to be perfectly honest, I think I need to see you. I can't do it over the phone. So the following day, he was very good. The following day, went to see him, he sat down, and his response was, I'm not an expert, but I think we need to get you down to the memory clinic and get you involved with them. So he did that. Again, it's locked down, so everything took, I think this was like, it was right at the beginning of lockdown. Was that April time? I think it was April time of the 2020. So we did that, and then it was about August when I saw the consultant for the first time, and he actually came to the house and he spent probably 2 hours with myself and my wife going through different things, doing the tests again. He booked me in for another MRI. Said, you know, he'd like to see if there's any difference. So went in for another MRI, and then I think it was August, end of August, he came back, he did his test again. He went through the MRI scan, he said there's a lot of scar tissue. There's no tumours, but there's a lot of scar tissue, and that was the first I'd heard about scar tissue. And he says, and that's what's affecting you. And he says, and by the way, you've got young onset Alzheimer's. He said, we'll put you on a couple of things to slow it down, close the book and walk off. Because after that, he has nothing else to do with you, really. So he wrote a letter to the doctor for my medication. He did warn me that some doctors don't like to prescribe the medication because it's quite expensive. But he said, if you have a problem, he said, we will get in touch with them and we will show them the facts that if you start on this now, the benefits to the National Health Service later on the line, money-wise, is better than not doing it, because it would only be add-on and add-on costs. So fortunately the doctor was fine, and I was prescribed on donazepam and then memetamine, which I'm on now, hopefully. So that's really the basics of everything. It's not nice to be told you've got dementia. There's two very bad things that I think everybody does. One, you feel sorry for yourself because you think the world's ending. And it takes a while to realise that, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It takes its time. The drugs will slow it down. So you've got 20, 30 years, well, I've got, hopefully got 20, 30 years left. But the second thing you do is you go to your laptop and you type in Alzheimer's disease and you see all these pictures. And not being ageist, but all these sites, they're people that are 80, 90, they're bedridden, they're in wheelchairs. They're being spoon-fed by people. And you know, I'm thinking, that's not me. You know, I'm not that person yet. I don't want to be that person, but I'm not that person. Why am I being grouped, you know, there? So we had a cry, and as everybody does. And then I think it was about a couple of days later, I turned around to the wife and said, oh, I'm not having this. I've played rugby, I've got knocked down, I've got injured, I've got back up, go again. So we'll treat this the same. We'll get up, off we go again. So I actually started going through the internet for groups to go to in the middle of lockdown. Never thought about it. Middle of lockdown, groups, who can I go and see? Of course, they've all shut down. But then when I started looking at what groups there were, again, they were more respite groups for people to take their person living with dementia, so they could have, the carer could have some time on their own and have respite, and the person was looked after, which is fine for when you're down that end, but when you're starting out on this journey, it's just as hard for the person living with you as it is for yourself living with it. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what to do. So I was trying to find somewhere where we could learn all this. And there wasn't anywhere, so I just turned around and said, well, we'll start one ourselves. Fortunately, few people I know. One's an ex-reporter, so he did a little piece, sent it to the EDP, who put it up. They put it in the paper, and all of a sudden I got people getting in touch from me all over Norfolk. They were in groups that had shut down, they were doing it by Zoom, but they were all saying, yes, there's nothing out there for somebody with young onset. All the best, and what can we do to help? So we had a coffee morning, raised some money. We've got a very nice village hall. So in the October, we set up our own group. It started off, I think, with 6. I think we're up to about 26 now. But and that's how it all started. And if you talk to each other, everyone's had a different little problem to overcome. My biggest problem, well, one of my biggest problems is somebody will tell me what needs doing, and half an hour later, if I've not written it down, it's gone. So, I use a phone. I use copious amounts of paper. I use a watch as well. I talk to my watch, put messages on, but it all helps. And I've never been one for routines. Every day was a different day. Got up, did what you want. Not be one for a lot of routines, but now in a routine, I'll get up in the morning, check my phone before I go late at night. I'll check my phone again to make sure that things have been done, cross things off that have been done, and just things like that. And it's hard to explain to people. Dementia is not forgetting things. Dementia is not somebody, saying to you, "Oh, you didn't put the kettle on." Oh no, I didn't put the kettle on, because it's like somebody's took your life in a bit of film, got a pair of scissors, snipped a piece out, and put it back together. That piece is gone, and it's never going to be there. And when you start out on this journey, you always trying to remember what's not there, and it's the wrong thing to do because it's not there. So don't worry about it. Just, it's gone. Don't worry about it. Carry on, because if you do worry about it, you just, and I think we all do it. I did it. You get into you start getting a bit depressed because of it. But no, it's like I say, someone's come along, took a little bit of your life, took it away from you, and it's gone. It's very, very sad, but it's not the end of the world. There's people far worse off. It's not like somebody's chopped your hand off. It's a little bit, it's 5-10 minutes of your life has disappeared. So you have to sort of get your head around it a bit and do that. But it's very hard to deal with people that don't understand dementia, because they only, probably being rather rude to a lot of people, but a lot of people only think of dementia as what they see on the television. And that is a minute fraction, and the television only show you the worst bits. They don't show you the bits of day-to-day life that you have to live with. The classic example, when I was in hospital, one of the nurses came in and said to me, I said, I said, "Oh, it's all right, I've got young on Alzheimer's." "Oh, all right then." "No, I've got young Alzheimer's. I'm not foreign. I've not gone deaf. I've got young Alzheimer's. I'm still exactly the same, but I just don't remember everything. I don't need to be shouted at. I don't need to be spoken in one-syllable words. I do understand words. I mean, one of the things my consultant said to me once I'd done all the tests, he says, one of the things you've never realised is how high your IQ is, which I've never had an IQ test in my life. But he just said, you've never realised how, so you will, he said, you will feel it a bit worse than other people because your IQ is part of your memory. It's not just working things out, it's you use the memory to work things out. So, I don't need shouting at. I don't need shoved into a corner and sat down in a little chair and looked after. I don't need a Tommy Tippy cup to drink out of yet or anything. But that's what people think. It's very difficult to try and put somebody else. If somebody said it to me a while ago, if you want to pretend you're blind, you can put blindfold on. But you can't pretend that you can't remember something. It's fact, it's there, it's not there. So it's very hard to explain to somebody what's actually wrong with you. I don't advertise that I've got Alzheimer's. If people start sort of questioning what's going on, I will tell them, dreadfully sorry, but if I forgot something, I've got Alzheimer's. Or I still work in a post office, and one of the things I have difficulty with is a keyboard. I know it's a QWERTY keyboard, but don't ask me where the Q, U, E, R and T are, because I have to look. So people say, oh, how do you do this job when you type so slow? I used to run my own business. I used to not even look at the keyboard to type, but I can't do that anymore. It's gone. It's just one of those things. It slows me down, but it doesn't stop me from doing my job. I can still use one finger and go around a keyboard. So I'm not looking for people to say how sorry they are for me. I'm fine. But I don't want to be mistreated in the same way. And that can get quite frustrating. People assume because you got Alzheimer's, you can't do anything. We can. I say the group, I think the oldest is 72 and the youngest is 56. So you've got nearly 20 years span of people with young onset Alzheimer's, and there's younger people out there. They're very capable. Half of them are still working. So that's not a great problem to us. The problem is when people try and treat us as though we're a problem.
When you were in hospital, Doug, what helped you? What were the approaches that people had that helped you best?
It's very difficult. So I was actually in for food poisoning. Partly the Alzheimer's, partly I'd had something wrong, but it was difficult because it was in the middle of lockdown, so the hospital wasn't a hospital as normal. If you'd asked me that question as I'd just come out of hospital, I would have said, I didn't have a problem. But then later on, when I was back, we had one of the dementia team come in to give us a talk. And she started going off about, when you come in, if you had dementia, you get a blue forget-me-not and this. No, I didn't get a blue forget-me-not. Nobody really asked me if I had Alzheimer's. I told them because I needed to take my medication, and that, but nobody really sort of, said I'd got Alzheimer's. I then find she was then, there's also, you're supposed to fill in a "This is me" form. No, didn't get one. I also found out that my wife could have got a car pass and come in when she wanted to see me, which she couldn't. We were never told. So besides the first day I was there when she dropped some clothes off, a Kindle and a phone, that was the only time I saw her for 4 days. And I did say, I remember it wasn't one of the nurses. I think it was one of the ones that come around and serve the coffee and everything like that, and said, because I was stuck in a room by myself, which is not the best environment with someone with dementia, but I'd got food poisoning, so they can't let me loose on a ward or anything like that. So I understand that. But human contact is just something else to keep the mind working. I was lucky I had a window, so I could look out the window and see things going on. But I did say to them, is there any way I can sort of go out and have a walk? And they, why? I've got young Alzheimer's. So they brought me a puzzle book. Sorry, puzzle book. No. Yeah, it's like anything. It's 5 or 10 minutes entertainment for. So it's great when you're on the beach on holiday to pass the time, but it doesn't really get your mind working. I mean, I was reading books, looking out the window, so that was very difficult. Any nurse that came in was unfortunate enough to get a half-hour conversation off me because I held on to them as long as possible. Speaking to somebody just normally is as helpful as anything. It really is. It's just I remember, again, it was the consultant who I spoke to later on, and he said to me, what you got to remember is going for a half-hour walk does more good to you than reading half a book, doing a Sudoku puzzle or anything like that. If you go for a half-hour walk, your brain's thinking about where your feet's got to be, your eyes are looking where you're going, you're smelling things, you're registering everything around you, so your brain's working, and that's what your brain needs. If you're sitting in a room on your own reading a book, the only bit of your brain working is the bit that reads the book. There's nothing else going on. You're not listening to anything, you're not doing anything else. So 15-20 minute walk is much more beneficial than sitting in a room for half a day reading a book. So that's the sort of thing that helps. And I know it's probably not the best thing to have loads of people walking around the hospital, but the other thing about dementia is it lowers things. It's lowered my tolerance, which I didn't have a lot of to begin with, but my tolerance is low. And when I was in hospital, I went into A&E, went from A&E to one room. So I saw one doctor, then saw another doctor. Then I had to go for a couple of tests. Then I saw another doctor. Then I went to another room, saw another doctor. And then by the time I've seen the 6th doctor, and they all say the same thing. Hello, Mr. Geary, how are you? Can you tell me what happened? The 6th time down the road, I'm thinking, look, just... So at that point, I'm going, just go out, read me notes, and you know what's wrong with me. I'm not going to change my story. It's exactly the same. If you ain't going to be bothered to read me notes, I'm not going to be bothered to tell you. And it's not me being funny. It's I'm not very well. My tolerance has gone. And I'm getting asked the same question. I mean, it almost feels like you're in a police cell being questioned about something. You know, have I done something wrong? Don't think I've done anything wrong. But so you get on the defensive, you get aggressive, you get intolerant. Poor little doctor went running off, and the nurse came in and told me off. She said she shouldn't really talk to the doctors like that. But I said, well, they keep asking me the same question. You know, I'm not going to change. So that's hard for people mean, I'm not a horrible person at heart, but you get to the point where, you're just fed up with it. You don't want it anymore. And because it's one of the, I like to call it side effects of dementia, you go on the attack to get rid of it. You don't want it anymore. I don't want to be asked all these questions. I mean, there was only one doctor the whole time I was in there that, without being told, worked out I had something wrong. And he was one of the consultants, so he was a mister, not a doctor. He had his little entourage with him, and they were going through it, and he, about 15 minutes or so, and he said to the interns, whatever they are, the young doctors, he said, right, can you tell me what's wrong with Mr. Geary? And they all said, well, he's got such and such food poisoning is on this. And I said, no, there's something else wrong with him. Didn't you notice him when I was talking to him? He's looking out the window. No. Well, yeah, I'm talking to him and his attention's gone and he's looking out the window. He's answering the questions, but he's not watching what's going on anymore. He's more interested in something like that. And he turned around to me and said, have you got dementia? I went, yeah, I've got young onset Alzheimer's. But he was the only one in 4 days. And I'd seen 10 doctors.
I'll be uploading more in the future. Thank you.